find us down here. Sorry for the inconvenience of changing a location, but I was scrambling yesterday afternoon, and it's not really the fault of the library, although there was a schedule 6 months ago that I didn't get. We're going to start with Pastor Bart Spencer giving us an invocation, who was gracious enough to allow us to use this facility. And we do have food and drink in the other room. Pastor has asked that we not bring any food and drink into this room. With that, I will introduce Pastor Bart Spencer, who is the pastor of this church, the Lighthouse Baptist.
Welcome here. Good to have you folks tonight. And I thought it was kind of odd. I heard Jim on HTC yesterday morning, and about 2.5 hours later, he was on my phone. I said, I thought we were over there at Zealand. We need a place to meet. I said, well, we've got a place. And if it was up to me, I wouldn't care if you had pizza in here, but I've got to deal with the people who clean this. You understand what I'm saying? And we all answer to somebody. And that's the cleaning people. All right. Well, let's have a word of prayer and we'll get started this evening. Father, we thank you for the opportunity of being here tonight. We thank you for the chance that we still have the freedom and the liberty. You've been so gracious to us. And Lord, if you would use groups like this across the nation, maybe we could be the balm of Gilead for our nation. Father, the salt of the earth, we might be able to spread, or to stop the spread, if you will, of the decay that seems to be so rapidly advancing. So Lord, I pray that you bless tonight. I pray that you would be honored with the things that are said and done. And then, Father, we thank you for a meeting place. We can have the warmth, the comfort. We're so spoiled and so blessed. So, Lord, I ask for your blessing and your presence tonight. Be with us in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Jim?
Can we rise for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I mentioned, I will. Ooh, that's sensitive. See, I've got my own built-in amplifier in here. I have no doubt, as distraught as I was yesterday afternoon, that his hand guided me to Pastor and provided this place, with Pastor being a vehicle. So, special thanks to him, with a capital H. There's a piece of paper on the tables, on your chairs. It's not, I don't want a novel, it's not brain surgery, there's just a lot of yes-no questions that I really, really appreciate. And one of the things that is so difficult when we do have an emergency, such as this, or a few weeks ago we had a snow day, how do I reach you people? It becomes very, very difficult. The last thing I wanted was for somebody to be standing at the library and wondering where we were. Or get there, they did put a sign up and then have to turn around and come over here. So I very, very much appreciate your completing this. If you're wondering what the telephone number is for, it's not going to be shared with anyone. But I use an email system. Some of you know that I can tell when you open it, but only if you view the picture. It says something like, you know, viewing the pictures will identify you or something. That's the vehicle that lets me know. We're going to get to our speaker in a moment or two. There are two events happening next week. On Wednesday the 20th in Grand Haven, there is a conversation on gun violence. I didn't know there were violent guns, but I would like, there's some paper in the very back. The speakers who are listed, some of them have backed out. I don't know who they're going to get, but I would like every strong Second Amendment person to get registered and to arrive early. It'd be nice if we had more people there than that. The next thing is, I'm sorry, I said Wednesday. I'm sorry about that. Wednesday the 20th. Wednesday the 20th in Lansing, and there's some literature back there, I think, about that, or I will have it on our website before the night is out. There is a rally, Second Amendment rally in Lansing on Capitol I'd like to see as many of us there as possible. I'd like us to get some carpooling and so on. The next day, Thursday the 21st, is the Grand Haven gun violence. With that, we do have a committee that goes to the Ottawa County Commissioners, and Mike Carras is going to give us an update on that.
Just so everybody knows, Amy, could you stand up? She's the one that's organizing this effort. She's organized us into 4 teams. Each team is assigned a number of dates to cover the Board of Commissioners meeting, the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners meeting, and then report back to you people, all of us, on what happened, so we all don't have to go. That's what I'm doing now, all right? And next month, Team 1, is anybody here from Team 1? Okay, all right, here's one. They're gonna cover, and they're gonna report back. This month, the primary focus of attention was on updating Ottawa County's participation in the MERS system. Who knows what the MERS system is? Michigan Employee Retirement System. What's happened here in Ottawa County is that the Board of Commissioners have moved the county's employees, there are about 1,000 of them, from the defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Starting April 1st, all new employees in any department working for the Ottawa County Commissioners will have the option to participate in a defined contribution plan. They will no longer have a defined benefit plan for them. Those employees who currently work for the County Commission and have a defined benefit plan have the option to switch to a defined contribution plan. Now, they believe they're going to save, the commissioners believe they will save about $30 million net for us. Thank you very much. Hopefully that happens. The meeting began with a report from the legislative liaison. That's an individual that the county has who spies on what's going on in Lansing and tells them what's going on. And so I'll tell you what he told the commissioners. As you may have heard, Governor Snyder wants to raise fees for registrations and raise gas tax so that he can have another $1.5 billion of our dollars to use to maintain our roads. That's going nowhere in Lansing. What's going to happen? I don't know yet. The legislative liaison does not know what's going to happen. There's no direction yet. There's no direction on how to raise the money. In my opinion, they have it already. They just need to reprioritize the way they're spending the money they're already collecting, but that's not for me. And they also haven't figured out how to distribute the money. Personal property tax reform is in the works. That's a result of Governor Snyder's initiative last year. So something's going to happen. There's going to be a change in the way business property is taxed. Personal, I don't know. But look for that to happen this year. There was also a very important discussion on water. There's a water study that happened here in Ottawa County. See me after the meeting and I'll tell you about it. It's very important. The commissioner made some policy changes. They changed the rules on how they can expense their per diem travel and so forth. They also received a number of reports from department heads, and I'll just mention the important ones. Brad Slaw, who's the treasurer for the county, reported primarily on the way that he has been able to save us money. For example, by allowing individuals to email in their applications for dog licenses, they saved $500 last year in postage. All right, Brad. They have started a land bank here in Ottawa. And that land bank is basically property that the county takes over, detoxifies, cleans up, and then tries to sell for the benefit of the county. Their goal, they're in the process of cleaning up and detoxifying the first parcel. They hope to have it sold sometime this year. That's going to raise money again for the county, which means it's less out of our pockets. They've also been more aggressive in issuing citations for people who violate the rules in our parks. All right, okay. Lisa Spatoski gave a report on the health services from the Health Services Department. Their focus is on prevention and not on individual care. So their focus is on immunization, for example. As it turns out, Ottawa County is leading the state in many of the metrics that are normally used. In fact, she reported that Ottawa County has been accredited with commendation by the state as a qualified health department in all of the areas in which the state monitors. So that's not just accredited now, but accredited with commendation, which means they're extremely outstanding, not just competent. So there are things going on at the Fillmore complex. The Board of Commissioners meets there, and I think that our commissioners are doing overall a good job in keeping us informed of what they're doing and in what they're actually doing. So I encourage all of you to see Amy and go see for yourself. Join one of her teams. It just takes a couple of hours. I was up there this afternoon. I'm coming back here and telling you what I heard. You might want to do it also. Okay. Martha, you should do that. You can do that. You're very good at it.
I've been there, done that.
Do it again. Do it again.
They
All
don't
right.
listen.
Well, it's our turn to listen, so we should listen to them. Okay? Yes. That's a new story. Yes. Okay. Back to you.
We're going to have Carl, who arranged to have David Sheldon come speak. David's going to speak for about 45 minutes. We're going to take a break so that we can hit the refreshments. Again, we'll be back there 10 or 15 minutes, and then please return here. And please don't bring food or drink in here. Carl?
It's my pleasure to introduce David Sheldon. I've had a couple opportunities now to talk to him, and last couple of days there were a lot of panic talking, but at any rate, David is president of the Michigan Stop Smart Meters, a Detroit-based organization that has been waging a battle now for nearly 2 years against the forced installation of smart electric meters. His group has working in concert with other groups, caused 24 units of local government to take a stand on this issue. The city and village councils, along with 2 county commissions, have all called upon the Michigan Public Service Commission to allow utility customers to opt out of having a smart meter. Because of their efforts, the commission opened an investigation a year ago and is currently evaluating a plan to allow utility customers to opt out for a fee. David has a bachelor's degree from Western Michigan University, where he majored in physics and economics. He went on to get his master's in business from the University of Chicago. He has devoted the last 20 years of his career to the field of developing business software applications. David's group put on a public meeting on smart meters last August in Holland and just 2 weeks ago in Muskegon, and the Muskegon people liked them so much they're here again tonight. He's come to this evening to give us a presentation on the dangers of smart meters and to fill us in on the current state of the battle against them in Lansing. David? Very good.
Well, it's good to be here, and I wanted to just kind of get an idea. I understand that most of you are Ottawa County, and that the smart meters have not yet been installed in your county. Is that correct? Okay.
Actually, that's not. Actually, north of the Grand River in Spring Lake area they have.
Okay. Do we have very many people here from Muskegon County? We've got a few, okay. Well, let me get started then. Can we got the first slide. Can we get the room lights down a little more so they can see it?
Can everybody see that okay?
Can those spotlights, that row of spotlights be off? Because those are the things that, the other lights could be on, but that row of spotlights is what's plugging the student.
Oh, they got dimmers too.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, there you go, that's good. Well, here I am, and as you can see, I don't have a tinfoil hat. So, I'm very much pro-technology and pro-business, as I think are most of the members of our group. And certainly we're not coming from any position of trying to oppose progress or technology or anything of that sort. We do have issues with this particular technology, and I'm going to try to cover that. Can we have that next slide? Yeah, there you go. Okay, what I'm going to do for the most part is I'll do an overview, primarily to explain what smart meters are and what they do. And then we'll go into the radio frequency issues and the fact that it's making some people ill. And then we'll go into the privacy issue. And then I'll try to explain how we got to this point. In other words, why do we have smart meters and why do we have to fight this battle? And then, what can we do about it? And I will be taking a break probably either after the second or the third item up there. Okay, I think let's have the next slide. Okay. First, we have what is an analog meter? And this is the traditional meter. If I step away from the mic, can everybody still hear me okay? Yeah. Better? Okay. Mr. Soundman, maybe you could turn the volume down even more on the mic. No? Okay.
Can you turn on this mic? Thank you, Pastor.
Okay. This just to show you what the analog meter is. Well, I think they can hear me anyway.
Okay.
So.
Whoa! We found it.
Is it working now? Is it working? All right. Well, I think I can be heard anyway. I'll try to spend most of my time near the podium, so it's get more.
Oh.
How many here really know what a smart meter is and what it does?
Choir.
A few of you. Okay. So I think it is important we go through that part in some detail so that you understand what it is.
Number 2.
This is your traditional analog meter. It looks like that, okay? It's got those 4 little things that look like clock dials and then a big wheel underneath. And it is mechanical, electromechanical in nature. And what it does is you record your electric consumption. Oh, okay. Okay, the gain is a little high on that. Okay, how's it now? Better? Okay. It is a mechanical device, and it measures your... Next slide. Can we get the next slide?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, since they can only be read manually, what that usually means is that somebody has to come around, a meter reader has to come around once a month and read them. So you only get a monthly reading, monthly usage, and many of us feel that should be enough. Next. Are you using the up and down arrow keys?
No.
That should do it, up and down arrow keys.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's page up and page down.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't see where Jim went, but he wanted a flyer for the
Oh.
28th rally. And so, I don't know when he comes back.
Okay, do you need some help back there?
Gene, you need help?
Let's try again. You ready for the next one?
Somebody that knows PowerPoint maybe could help them on that.
All right, there's your next slide.
Okay, the functions of the smart meter. It can measure or store or transmit usage information in small time intervals. It can record your usage. It can tell you how much electricity you use in a particular hour of the day. In some cases, these meters can be set to record usage by the minute, although generally speaking, the utilities are talking about recording by the hour. And even if the information is only sent 4 times a day or 6 times a day, they're still transmitting a breakdown by the hour, how much was used in each hour of the day. And this is done usually by radio waves, although it could be done hardwired through cable internet or through fiber optic or something of that sort. I know they do it that way in Italy, but in this country, so far most of the utilities are using the wireless approach. Next. Okay, these are other characteristics of the smart meter. It uses a two-way communication. So the utility it sends your readings to the utility, but the utility can also send signals to the meter to do various things. It can send a signal to the meter to turn the service on or off. For example, if you have a move-out situation, somebody moving out, somebody moving in, it can get the read. It could, if somebody's not paying their bill, it could turn the service off altogether at that location without the utility company having to send the man out to do that. Okay, next. Another thing that it does is it can act as a gateway for communication between individual appliances in your home and the utility. And this is where the so-called smart appliances come in. We're going to be getting a new generation of appliances, like particularly the major appliances, refrigerators, electric stoves, washers, dryers, dishwashers, also probably the thermostat in your home. A lot of these devices are going to have smart chips in them. And they will be designed to send signals by way of the smart meter to the utility company. The utility company will know what temperature you have your house set for, and they'll know if you're running your washer and dryer at particular hours of the day, and so forth. Next. Okay. A lot of us feel there's a question that not only is it intrusive to be collecting all this data, but we ask the other question, is all this data collection necessary? What purpose does it serve? It's going to reveal information that was heretofore private information about your daily routines of daily living, when you get up, when you make your meals, when you go to work, or when you leave the house on vacation unattended for a couple of weeks. A lot of people like to have arranged for somebody to take in their mail so it won't be obvious that they're away. But with these devices, we're going to, anyone who has access to this data is going to know when you're away from the house. And we believe the data can be hacked, although, of course, the utility will do their best to encrypt it and make it secure. Okay. Let's look at the reasons why utilities say they need these meters. First of all, it would be to conserve energy and to shift some of the energy demand to off-peak times of the day. That can be important because it costs the utility more money to furnish you a kilowatt of electricity during peak hours, which might be, say, from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. It costs more. It costs more because the utility has trouble meeting the total demand. They may have to buy electricity from other utilities out of state, or they may have to fire up less efficient generators. Either way, it costs them more during those hours to service you. And so part of the idea here is, in the past, what we've done is, with the ever-increasing demand for electricity, the utilities, their response has been to build more power plants as needed so that they could supply the ever-growing demand. Well, we're entering an era now where a lot of people think we can't work that way anymore, that, you know, because of global warming, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, dependence on Middle East oil. There's a range of issues that are leading some to say, well, we need to conserve and cut back on our usage. And one of the ideas behind the smart meter is that it will help, it'll make people more aware of how they're using electricity, because they can go on the internet and see exactly how much electricity they're using at this hour yesterday, for example. Or maybe they have an in-home display that'll give it to them in real time. It'll tell them what they're using right now. So that's part of the thinking. Whoops, back up one.
Oh.
I don't think we got the second one in.
I thought you
Previous
did.
slide. Okay. No, we did. We covered that. Okay, next slide. The question is, do these smart meters really cause conservation of electricity, and do they really cause people to shift their behavior so they use less electricity during the peak hours? Now, we've seen no evidence. There's been no study that we're aware of, and believe me, we've been looking for this. There's no study that's been done that shows that people actually change their behavior enough to justify the cost of meters. For example, on my side of the state, Detroit Edison did a couple of pilot projects, and that was supposed to culminate in some sort of analysis. Did people use the new information in a way that enabled them to shift to off-peak hours or to reduce their total energy consumption? They never completed that analysis. They never proved that there was any such benefit. Next. Okay, other reasons why the utility needs it. Well, for time of use pricing, and here the idea is maybe the utility should be charging more per kilowatt hour if you use it during prime time, say between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 8 o'clock at night. More because it costs more for them to provide it during those hours. And pricing the electricity higher during those hours might give people an incentive to shift to off-peak. Again, we've seen this aspect of it hasn't really been tested in Michigan because we don't have any time to use pricing that I'm aware of, at least the two big utilities, Consumers and Edison, I believe. That's correct, isn't it? Consumers hasn't done that yet, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said clearly.
Okay, Consumers has not actually implemented time of use pricing.
No.
No, okay. So this is only a theoretical benefit. It hasn't been proven. Next. Okay, we covered that. Next slide. Okay, but let's just assume, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that pricing electricity higher during prime time really will change people's behavior. Do we then need the smart meters in order to implement such a system? And I'm going to say no. All we need is a dual register meter. It could even be an electromechanical meter, analog meter, that has two registers. One that tracks how much you use during prime time, one that tracks how much you use during off-peak hours. Next slide. Might look something like that. See, on the upper one, where it says 029874, that would be your usage in peak hours. And then down below it would be how much electricity you use in off-peak. Next slide. Well, another reason for smart meters was to eliminate the cost of meter readers, and that's an important benefit. In the short run, it might hurt some folks because, you know, we've been going through a period of high unemployment, and some people may get laid off, although the utilities generally say they will find other work for them. But in the long run, of course, labor saving is a good thing. We eliminated the buggy whip makers, and we may want to eliminate the meter readers too in the long run. But there's systems that can do that without smart meters. They're called AMR systems, which stands for automatic meter reading. And some other utilities are using them. I believe Illinois Light and Power is using it, and they're servicing a small area of southwestern Michigan, and they're using that AMR system. It's a drive-by system. The utility company has a vehicle, a car or truck, that runs up and down the street once a month. And they send out what's called an interrogation signal that says, give me your readings. And in an instant, every meter on that street answers back with their readings. They move on to the next street and do the same thing. Nobody has to get out of the car or the truck. They just get the readings wholesale that way with minimal expense. So the question is, why isn't a system like that being considered rather than smart meters? Okay, next slide. Now, the other argument is that for reporting power outages, and there's a need for that. We realize that after a storm, when an ice storm or a snowstorm or a windstorm, a lot of times a lot of wires come down and the utility is scrambling sometimes around the clock trying to get everybody's service restored. A lot of times they think they've got a neighborhood restored and they've driven on to the next neighborhood. They get the call that this house still doesn't have power. Maybe they have to backtrack. Well, with part of the idea of smart meters is that they will instantly know whether they got power restored to every house on the street before they go to the next. But that could be accomplished in other ways. All you need is some little kind of alarm that's battery powered that would do that. Next slide. Who pays for smart meters? We all do. Partly through federal taxes and partly, and the rest of it through our monthly utility bills. Our Public Service Commission has given our utilities, Detroit Edison and consumers, permission to pass along these costs to us in our monthly utility bills. And, initially, some of the money for the pilot projects and such was provided through federal taxation, was provided through Obama's stimulus grant. But that was a big factor initially, but as time goes on, most of the costs are going to come through the monthly bill. Next. So why are they controversial? Okay. First of all, there's the invasion of privacy. We see this as a Fourth Amendment issue. And you're supposed to be able to be secure in your home. A man's home is supposed to be his castle. Now, what you do in your home has generally been, as a matter of law, has been protected. Even when the police use infrared technology to figure out if there's too much heat coming from a roof, that maybe somebody's growing marijuana, they got slapped down on that by the United States Supreme Court, that was an invasion, that was a Fourth Amendment violation. To use an infrared sensor from out in the street is a violation. How much more of a violation is it to draw all the information through the wiring out from the home out into the utility? Information that will reveal things, and I'll get into that later. Second reason is health. Now, there's two health issues, really. The first one is the electrosensitive people. These are folks who will develop symptoms almost immediately when a smart meter is put on their home. They get symptoms from other things, too. Some of them have problems with cell phones, or they have problems with Wi-Fi, or whatever. But we know of many cases in the east side of the state where people have gotten sick. Think of things like headaches, nausea, heart palpitations, inability to sleep, and whatnot. Now, these definitely a minority. Clearly, this is probably less than 5% of the population that gets these type of immediate symptoms. Well, but shouldn't we be concerned about that? I mean, we do a lot of things to help the handicapped to be able to do normal things and lead a normal life. I mean, we have handicap parking spots, we have curb cuts for wheelchairs, we do things. We perhaps should be considering the welfare of this small segment of the population, it's under 5%. But there's another factor here, and that is maybe they're like the canary in the mine. In other words, I guess probably a lot of you know what the canary in the mine is all about, but I'll say it anyway. The coal miners have a long-standing tradition of taking the canary in the mine because they worry about buildup of methane gases. They worry about buildup of coal dust. They could become unconscious and die from the methane gases. They could be an explosion from the coal dust. They need a way to know when the levels are unsafe. Well, this is an old practice. Probably today they have electronic instruments to detect these things. But old-fashioned mining process is you take a canary in the mine. If you get sick, you get out of there fast. So my point here is, if we got 5% of the population that is immediately getting sick when a smart meter is put on the house, should that tell us something? Should that tell us that maybe we're all at risk in the longer run? only it may take longer for most of us. It may take 10, 15, 20 years before we see the results. I mean, that's kind of how it was with cigarettes. It took many, many years of smoking before people would develop lung cancer. And of course, the industry, as you all know, was fighting tooth and nail and arguing that, no, these things aren't dangerous. You know, there's been no conclusive study, peer-reviewed study or whatever, to prove under controlled conditions that smoking causes cancer. Okay, they got away with that for decades. Finally, they were brought to heel, and they had to pay huge damages for the illness that they had caused. But it was too late for a lot of folks. You know, no amount of money can give you back your health. Okay, other things. Damage to household appliances. Now, we've had reports of various appliances, refrigerator motors burning out, high-end audio equipment being destroyed. Admittedly, these are not, you know, these are not every house by a long run. They're a small minority of the homes, but it has happened. Now, the other thing is making the electrical grid vulnerable. One of our former, Woolsey, our former head of the Central Intelligence Agency, was interviewed by ABC News, and he said, look, you know, these smart meters are going to give you the ability, they're going to give you the ability to, let's say it's hot weather in the summertime, and you're driving to work and you realize you forgot to turn your air conditioning off. Well, it's no problem. You just take out your smartphone and you dial up your home and you turn off the air conditioning without, you know, from wherever you are. But he said, you know, this is all really stupid, he said, because if you can do that, so can some guy in Shanghai. He can call up your air conditioner and turn it off. He can do more than that. He could turn off all power to your home. He could possibly, a skilled hacker could turn off all power to a whole city, or worse. So what we're doing is we're making the electrical grid vulnerable because they're trying to turn the electrical grid into an extension of the internet. We all know that the internet can be hacked. It's getting hacked regularly. People's credit card information is being stolen. Sometimes there are denial of service attacks, which means you can't even get on the internet because of some bug that somebody's planning. Do we want these kind of problems with the electric power that we rely on in some cases in some cases, it could be a matter of life and death, where medical equipment is running off the grid. Then there's also a risk of house fires. There have been a few. I won't make too much of that. Next slide. Okay, the microwave radiation. The type of radio waves that smart meters use it's very close to the same radiation that a microwave oven uses, although of course at much less intensity. And what it does is it can do a couple of things. It's very intense if you're standing right next to the meter, if you're standing like a foot away from the meter. As you get further and further away from the meter, the intensity of it goes down markedly. But there's a complication. These waves bounce off things. They can bounce off smooth, hard surfaces like glass, concrete, granite countertops. So when they bounce, the reflected wave then crosses the original wave, and where they intersect, you've got double-strength wave. And there could be multiple reflections crossing each other, so you could get triple or quadruple strength, where those intersection points are. And it could be right where you're standing at the kitchen sink that all those waves are intersecting. So it's a concern. Next slide. Okay, they add. Okay, I just mentioned that. Okay, I covered that one. Okay, the last one is the damage that's done by radio frequencies is cumulative over time. One of the things that we know from experience is that a person who most of their life had not become electrosensitive can reach a point because of their cumulative exposure where now they are electrosensitive. And once that happens, it's usually not reversible. They are then at a point where they have to protect themselves from cell phones, Wi-Fi, smart meters, any of those sources. garage door openers, what have you. They've reached a point where they can't tolerate any of that stuff anymore because their cumulative exposure, their lifetime cumulative exposure has reached a certain point. Next slide. Okay, and what this shows, the utilities will often say to you, well, you don't have to worry too much because your meter's mounted on the outside of your house, and it's designed so that the radiation radiates away from the house. It projects out outside the house. It's sending a signal to maybe the nearest cell phone tower, and so it's aimed away from the house and not into the house. Well, we find that that's simply not true. The transmitters and the antennas in these units are not directional, they're omnidirectional. And this diagram here on the right, what you're seeing there is you're looking down like you were above the house looking down. And if you draw a horizontal line through the middle of that thing, that's the wall of your house. And so the curve, the half of the circle that's above that line would be the stuff that's projecting outward away from the house. And the stuff that's below the line is what's projecting into the house. You see there's a little notch there at the bottom. So there is a dead zone where you don't get hardly any radio waves. But it's small. And there's a lot of area there where the waves will project into the house. Maybe right through where you're sitting at your desk in your study, or right where you're sleeping at night, or right through where you stand at the kitchen sink. Could be in the path of that stuff. Okay, next slide. The meters communicate using the wireless frequencies, but they use, it's not a continuous wave, like 60 cycle wave is continuous wave. It's pulses. And each pulse has a high intensity peak. And the peaks, when the utility or anyone reports the energy level of these things, and they say they're at safe levels, they're complying with FCC standards and so on, what they're reporting is the average energy level. Unfortunately, that it's the peak energy level that's significant biologically in terms of how it can affect your body, not the average. Next. Okay, there's the graphic. I don't know how well can you see it. Up to the left, horizontally, it's time that we're showing in minutes. Or no, in seconds actually. 0, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, across the bottom. Up the side, we have power density, starting with 0, then 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100% power at the top, upper left-hand corner. Now you see these peaks, these are the pulses. You know, every few seconds, depending on the type of system. Now in a mesh system, we know it's about every 8 or 9 seconds, but that's the kind that Detroit Edison uses, but Consumers is using a different system, and their pulses may be a lot less frequent than that. But the pulses are very short. They're a tiny fraction of a second, like 50 milliseconds might be a typical pulse duration. And most of the time, there's nothing in between the pulses. So when you average that all out, the average may be very low. You see that blue line it's up just a little bit from the bottom of the graph, that horizontal blue line. Over here it says average power density. That would be the average energy of those pulses. So that kind of illustrates what I was saying. I have to watch my time here because I'm supposed to break in about another 10 or 15 minutes here for refreshment. So, next slide. Okay, I think we've covered that. Next one. Now, this is going to be kind of hard to see. You'll just have to take my word on this. I know you can't see that. It's going to be fuzzy for you probably. But all it is plotting the types of symptoms people experience at different energy levels. Let me not dwell too much on that one. But there's a range of symptoms. Okay. Can't read it myself from here. Next slide. Okay. Why is it claimed? Why do utilities and others in the industry claim that these smart meters are safe? We think they are falsely claiming. And the reason we think it's false, they say it meets FCC guidelines. Well, problem is, are the FCC guidelines good enough? And we're going to talk about that in a little more detail, and that might come after the break. but we have every reason to believe the FCC guidelines are not appropriate and are not sufficient protection. They will tell you that the radiation from smart meters is less than cell phone, a lot less. And they'll tell you that it's only transmitting maybe 1 to 2% of the time, so what's the big deal, right? Well, we're going to talk more about that in the next part. Next slide. The guidelines. These are the FCC guidelines. They will protect a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound male from a thermal effect. In other words, heating of the skin, basically. This standard was developed for industrial situations, to protect workers in industrial situations. If the radio frequency energy level gets above a certain level, it's enough to start heating the skin. And they say that's where we got to draw the line. So they set the standard well below that. Actually, I think they set the standard at something like 1% as much energy as it would take to start heating the skin. But they're only looking at the thermal effect. And they're averaging those emissions over 30 minutes instead of looking at the pulse height. And the standard is only designed to protect you from a single device. But in reality, in real life, we're exposed from multiple devices. I mean, we're getting it from Wi-Fi, we're getting it from our smart meter, our neighbor's smart meter, we're getting it from cell phone towers and cell phones themselves, and maybe other devices that we have in the home that are exposing us as well. It's the cumulative exposure from all this stuff. Okay, the FCC standard was for a single acute exposure. That means a single incident in an industrial workplace, basically, not designed to protect people who are being exposed 24/7, even while they sleep. Next. What we're concerned with, the FCC guidelines give you no protection from non-thermal effects caused by radio waves. And there are a great many medical people and biologists who have published in peer-reviewed journals that have discussed experiments that have been done to show the biological effects of non-thermal waves. Of course, they don't protect you against pulses. They assume a continuous wave. They don't look at the peak energy pulses, and they don't look at the cumulative exposure from all sides. Next slide. Okay. Finally, the FCC standards were for, remember, they're for 6-foot, 200-pound male. They don't protect children, they don't protect the elderly, they don't protect pregnant women, and they do not provide for a nighttime recovery period. Now, that last one's very important. Our bodies can stand quite a bit if we get a respite from it every day. If at night when we're sleeping we're not exposed, our body has a chance to repair and heal itself. And then maybe we can take more of it the next day. But if we never get a respite, if we're exposed 24 hours a day, that's a different story. Next. Okay, a lot of times smart meters are compared with cell phones. The reason is that they're using approximately the same RF frequency, and because the utilities say that the smart meter is less than the cell phones. However, Daniel Hirsch, who is a nuclear physicist, has done research on this and measurements, and he says that when you do it apples to apples, and you consider the whole body exposure, not just the exposure, like the cell phone exposure is right up against your head, and usually they only look at the exposure in that area. But when you look at the whole body exposure from smart meters versus the whole body exposure from cell phones, it turns out that the smart meters give you 100 times more than the cell phone. Next. The World Health Organization, in May of 2012, just about a year ago, they issued a report that classified the radiation from cell phones as a possible carcinogen. And in 2001, they had issued a report regarding ultra-low frequencies, stating that they are possible carcinogen. Now, this is not in the radio range, it's in a much lower frequency range. Next. Okay, now, I just put these two websites up for the moment because some of you may have questions and say, well, some of you may want to go to the original source material and read the actual research that was done by credible scientists and published in peer-reviewed journals. If you want to pursue any of that, here's two websites. My organization is MichiganStopSmartMeters.com. We have a lot of the stuff on our site. And then there's also StopSmartMeters.org, which is based out of California. And that's probably the leading smart meter site nationwide. So those two are good to jot down if anyone wants to pursue it. So I'll just delay a second in case people are writing it down. Okay, next. What are some of the complaints that people have? Now, these are electrosensitive people, admittedly minority population, but what are their symptoms? Well, there's cognitive symptoms, concentration, memory. Other studies have shown sleep disruption, headache, depression, discomfort, irritability, nausea, visual disorders, cardiovascular problems, respiratory problems, nervousness, and agitation. But apart from those few things I mentioned, it's really a good product. All these are related to electrical changes in the brain. Okay? Next. Okay. What's going on really? Why is it that these radio waves can cause all this havoc? Well, first of all, it's been shown, experiments have been done by credible people and published in peer-reviewed journals that show that these kind of radio waves break down what's called the blood-brain barrier. There's a barrier that keeps things that are circulating in our blood that would not be good for the brain from entering the brain. And that barrier begins to break down because of these kind of radio waves. The radio waves can affect neurotransmitters. We are electrical creatures. Our bodies depend on all kinds of electrical signals to work properly. The brain is always sending signals to the heart to tell it how fast to beat. And there's numerous other examples where electrical signals are sent from one part of the body to another to inform an organ to work harder or to work less. And when you hit certain frequencies, it can play havoc with the body's own internal signal. It's been known to lower testosterone levels. It can decrease sperm production. It can affect natural rhythm of the brain. It can affect heart rate and cause heart rate to be variable. Next. It can reduce melatonin. Probably many of you know the benefits of melatonin. It's a natural substance our body produces. It helps us to sleep at night. It has many other benefits. And well, I'll just leave it at that. It does that. Okay, next slide. And they are believing that, there's studies that show that the incidence of Alzheimer's is 4 times higher with people who've been living for a long time, like decades, near radio frequency emitting device. There was a study done in San Francisco, for example. There's a big radio tower right in the middle of San Francisco, and they looked at the incidence of Alzheimer's that occurred within a half a mile of that tower versus people living, 4 or 5 miles away from the tower. A big difference in the incidence of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Okay, next slide. This is, these 3 pictures show, they're pictures of brains of a 5-year-old over there on the extreme left is a 5-year-old. In the middle is a 10-year-old child. And over here on the right is an adult. And what this is showing is that the 900 megahertz frequency, which is very close to what's used by the smart meters, it's also what some of the cell phones are using. It penetrates very easily almost the entire brain of a 5-year-old. Less so with the 10-year-old. And with the adult, the penetration is very small. What you're seeing, you're looking down on the top of the brain, and it looks like the head is pointing to the left. So that what you're talking about is exposure from a cell phone in the area of the left ear. Okay. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, so just to recap part 2 of my talk, and I think that would make a good break point for the refreshments, but to recap part 2, The FCC regulations do not protect against all of the effects of radio waves. There are also low radio frequencies that can interfere with cell communication. The residence exposure is much higher than what is admitted, and that's because of the cumulative exposure from multiple devices, the reflections off hard surfaces, and so on. It's a toxic accumulant, and then it builds up over time. You have a lifetime tolerance for what you can handle. Wireless microwave, we say it's not acceptable for the smart grid. And it's just almost 8 o'clock, and I think that'd be a good spot to break that, Jim.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Please stay seated for just a moment. Is anybody thirsty? What we're going to do is we're going to pass this around. And this is going to be a thank you for Pastor Spencer and for the use of his church.
Then he's got a mic.
So when we let that go around, and in fact that would be a good way, once the bucket goes past you, we can go out towards the refreshments area. By the way, has anybody have an extra piece of paper with that questionnaire that I sent out? I was looking for it earlier, I couldn't find it. It's not the questionnaire. And it's no big deal. I'll find it, okay? And in regard to the questionnaire, I very, very much appreciate your filling them out. It's kind of critical that, you know, as I'm going through the telephone list, gee, does this person come regularly? No, I can't put a name with a face. You know, I must have been exposed to smart meters. Yeah. Remember. All right. And I want to remind everyone, there was a gentleman in here who they have some answers. That is Dennis McKee from the Consumers Power, who will be speaking on the other side of this coin in a couple of weeks. And I wanted to, there was a church in town that had a presentation here. Are humans the cause of global warming? Does anybody go to that church that had that presentation last Friday? There was such a presentation.
Well, the person who presented that presented it Saturday morning at the school in Fire Center, and I went to that.
Okay, so you're familiar with it. The bottom, and I don't know what I wasn't able to attend, but I did attend a presentation at Hope College, hosted by the League of Women Voters. Does anybody remember that movie called Armageddon with Bruce Willis and the big rock heading towards the United States? Well, if you were to have been at that, Armageddon is coming, and it's called global warming. And there is a write-up in the MLive that pretty much talked about the doom and gloom and everything in our lives that are lowering the lake water levels. And the response to that written is a couple of articles by Jack Spencer with the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. Those, if you haven't read them, I urge you to go to our website, www.ottawacountypatriots.org, and there's some really interesting information on there. I'm going to post a link to that, the MLive write-up, so you can read about the doom and gloom about what was presented. And actually, the doom and gloom was not so much global warming. It is the fact that he stopped in the middle of his presentation to say that you people are all in the 2nd District, and your congressman, Bill Heisinger, is on the Appropriations Committee, and the real doom and gloom is that the appropriation for the study of climate change to universities and what have you has been cut 30%. That is the calamity. So, with that, I invite you all to go and some coffee and goodies and whatever. And let us on your way out, if you can just put your questionnaire right up here on this on these steps. Thank you very much. And do remember, please don't bring your food and drink back in here. There are tables in there, there are chairs on the side. We can move some of those chairs and sit down at the tables, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to ask that when we're done, could we put the chairs back so that there's not too much of a cleanup effort here afterwards. Okay, if you did not get a questionnaire, Here is a pile of them right here. Did you get one of the questionnaires?
Sound like me now. Set up front by the, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. We're not the government. We're not here to help them. We're going to put them up front here. I'm going to suggest that we stand in the kitchen and stand around and talk, because that'll be more conducive to going in there and then coming back here. Right up here, on the steps, the questionnaire on the steps, please. Thank you. They're out. No, they're out there on the table.
Can you just give the whole thing to him? He said he was going to charge us $50, but I think that's
No, for coming through in a pinch like this, I think that's...
Do you have any idea what it would have cost us at the yacht basin facility, or at the DoubleTree, or at the Midtown Center?
DoubleTree was $150 for that room. That's what we used for our car club to use
Not
that.
for one that'll hold it. I had said 100 people.
Oh.
Yeah, they were talking $500.
Yeah, I was going to
The
say.
yacht basin was up to 1,000, and they said, well, we might be able to knock it down to 800.
Oh my gosh.
The Midtown was 500. It didn't have any room anyhow. So I'm telling you, this was a major
Oh gosh.
thing.
You got keeping an eye on this guy while he's counting.
Let's see, 10 for you, 10 for me, a $2 bill. No, either. So.
Very many of them quickly.
You got to have that one, huh?
1, 2, and there's one. Oh, is this counting yet?
No, those are fives.
Okay. 1, 2, for that 2, and then here's another couple for me.
Okey-doke.
I want this.
Yeah, I've kept a number of those. But a friend of ours who's...
I wish these people would go into the... They're just not going to go?
They're not going to go get refreshments. A friend of ours who got a silver dollar from her grandfather, so she thought she ought to save it. So what'd she do? She brings it to the bank to have it put in her savings account. Excuse me, but you just lost that silver dollar that, God. It was a silver dollar.
I know, I've got about 10 of them.
You bet.
My wife's drawer.
Like in 1905 or whatever, so it was an old silver dollar. And on it, it says, that was still one of those that said, can be reclaimed. No, that was silver. That was a paper dollar, yeah, silver certificate. Right. So that thing is Wednesday in Lansing?
Yeah, I know people who work, right? It's not.
Well, I was trying to figure out a plan around it, but I'm putting in a bunch of units at...
It's a 9 o'clock march. It's a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock rally or lobby your congressman or your state reps, and then the rally. I'm not sure what here. Here it is.
Yeah. Well, our state reps, he was so nice that he voted no on the...
9:30, the march. 10 to 11, visit your state rep. 11 to 1, the speakers and music. We'll take the stage. And 1 p.m. is visit your state senator.
I've been really screwed us over by. Yeah. We go and rally over there. Judy was so ticked off.
I don't see any media here tonight. Normally, you guys get media? Sometimes. Well, you know. I've overlooked something. You didn't citizen journalist here. But not the mainstream. Yeah. Well, the Central Press, you know, they put your notice, so I thought you might sometimes sort of thing. I would hope you would. Well, maybe next time. Yeah.
2001. Well, I still want to know what we pulled in for tonight. So.
I'm saying 125. That's my guess.
Okay. 40.
Make that 100.
You said some of the speakers
45.
I'll call.
Oh, man. Nobody there to defend yourself.
Yeah, well, if they're going to be set up anyway.
The beauty of it is they wanted people there. They wanted people there to give the illusion on both sides of the coin.
That they were being fair.
That they're being fair.
Yeah, and there was.
And I talked to both Weinstein and Paul. I told them that because I want you to keep your eyes wide open. I want you to talk to the people because they didn't even know. They didn't even know what it was going to be about. They thought it was going to be about fire safety. And so they were. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to talk to Dick Kaminsky. Make up your own mind. I'm not advocating for you to pull up. I'm not advocating for you to stay. What I'm saying is that I want you to make up your own mind. They met with the guy. Within 20 minutes, he says, this guy's lying through his teeth, and he don't have anything to do with it.
Save money for people.
It is a lie. What do we got?
We can help people make
Hey, it won't be there anyhow. I had paid for a trip going on.
Well, why don't you go to the trip?
I'm going to, but I want to go down to Lansing next Wednesday.
Okay, good deal.
well, it's not saying
47, 48, 49.
Let's give the change to Carl. He wants some ice.
So we got.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why some papers been closed before you.
$147.
Yeah, because.
Oh, you've been there.
No, right.
You got it all? Yep.
Is Mr.
Really not as bad as they said, is it?
The Cook nuclear plant's gonna be a problem in 4 years. It'll probably
bad
start leaking.
reactor I heard last night.
Yeah, they're gonna have to shut down. That's gonna be a problem maybe before that.
What's going on with the Japanese melted plants? You go on the internet, there's no information, period. They're not
They
letting
shut up.
outside countries come in and even do any research or anything with it.
So one day we'll all be sick.
Well, no, we're all safe. They don't have to worry about it because they got it under control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm from Pennsylvania. Remember 3 Mile Island?
That thing melted down 3/5 of the world.
Well, I understand it did melt down. When I lived there, one place I could see the towers. And I lived in Lancaster, east of Lancaster, and that Great Lighthouse by 35 miles. Later on, I was less than 10 miles. But that was after the event.
Yeah, but they didn't get to the core for 7 years. So it wasn't
Right. And all this time, they lied to us and said it didn't melt down. It
right.
didn't.
Exactly. I didn't know until about 2 months ago that it actually did melt.
Well, here I have apartments in Mountain, and one of my tenants got to talking, and I said, "Well, for yearly service," he said, "Yeah, I was in the Navy, that's what he do, submarine." That's interesting. And then I said, "Well, I'm from Pennsylvania," and I go to the reactor. I said, "But it never melted down." I said, "What do you mean?"
They never told us.
He said, "One of the training films they show us is the meltdown of the reactor in one of their Navy training films."
I wonder really, I do wonder, because twice in the last month I've been on the internet, information on the jail, scientists. They're putting refuge in plastic bags and storing it.
schoolyards. It's after they dumped all the water into the ocean and all that junk that's coming into our Yeah, it took 3 days to get them there. No, I keep drive by that 3 mile island thing. The road so far north and south from like north to Harrisburg area and follow on the Susquehanna River. At one spot there, there's people on the road and they have a stand for them. And you can see the it is. But that was in before. Oh, was that? Yeah. Okay. But I drive by there and it's a scary sight. And then flying into Harrisburg after Pennsylvania, so I fly back. And when the plane comes into Harrisburg Airport, it always banks to the left. And you lean right down and move right down to town. Well, there's only 3 up there anymore. One they dismantled. Well, they dismantled the other part.
But I mean, I know, but
They say the one here.
so, you know, and I don't want to understand the heat in and when it was,
Carter was president.
I know.
He was Carter, and he was Pennsylvania, with the governor, and it showed him on television, the hard hats on, they walked across the trust across the bridge. I don't know, it showed him walking across.
You know, I can set it.
That's all you heard about it. And what was going on? I had a wife and a child, and one on the way, and I took them to Penn State colleges. I took them up there on the other side to get away from it in case it goes. And I'm on the other side, and I had my car packed and stuff. And I was ready for blast off. And that was on it. Anyhow, I took the dog along, they had a dog, and they adopted a baby. And this wasn't working. So she told me, and I said, come get me. And I said, no, I can't. I can't take this thing to the road, one or the other. So she called me at 1 o'clock in the morning, crying. I got my big motor in it. It was challenged. It's a 3-hour drive from my place up. I went up, picked them up, and brought them back in 4 hours. There was no cars on the road. And when you go right by the reactors, there they really had light shining on them. It looked like it was glowing. It was the arms from the lights. Look what happened in Hiroshima. Devastating. That's about 60 years ago. I guess they're building up now. No, that's what I had no idea. Now I'm more afraid of my guys than I am of Chavez. That's what I've been telling people for a long time. But he's the same as people. It's the same for other people. It's just the same. But I don't trust my government. What's the matter? Oh, yeah. Yeah. They don't teach you. They just go vacation. They're the same school. They don't go to the same food markets. They don't eat. They just don't pay. They don't.
Right. It's not. Right.
We're not given a choice. That's what people do. it's not better when democracy, which is manipulated. We're not getting we're tired to hold it. It's really propaganda. Genocide by skin people were 3/5 of the prison. That's where it started already.
What woman did go with just yesterday?
Whoa!
Let me know when you're ready and I'll turn your mic back on.
All right, we're gonna, is the mic working now? Yep. Yep, okay. We're going to, I think I'm gonna put that a little lower. We're gonna get started now. I'm gonna try to, what I want to do is to leave some time for question and answers. I hope we can have at least 20 minutes or so for question and answers at the end. So we've only got about 40, 45 minutes and we should conclude the evening, and I'll try to divide that so I don't take it all. I may have to pick up the pace on the rest of the slides. Okay. We recap part 2. Let's have the next slide. Okay, part 3 is the threat to privacy, and this is how smart meters threaten our privacy and our freedom to lead our lives the way we choose. Next, why is privacy important? Freedom to lead our lives depends on being able to establish areas of our lives that are not monitored and controlled by others. If our employer can pry into our daily living habits, it may turn out that we have to conform to the employer's dictates in order to hold on to our jobs. Next. Insurance company, also, same thing. Insurance company may discover you have unhealthy living habits by perusing your smart meter data. Government, again, can pry into a lot of things about what you're doing in the house without any need for a search warrant. Next. There's two phases to the privacy assault. The first phase is where they put the meter on your house. The second phase is going to be when they put in a smart, or when you are forced to buy the smart appliances that will talk to the meter. First phase. By the way, there's electric, gas, and water, and we have similar complaints against all three, but the electric one is the one that is the most intrusive. The electric smart meter, even if you don't have any smart appliances, the electric smart meter can reveal a good deal of information about your daily routines. Next. Okay, next slide. Okay, it can actually reveal particular appliances that you're using at different times during the day, even if they're not smart appliances, because each appliance has a kind of signature. The signature is defined by how much current does it draw, the duration of time that it draws that current, the startup or inrush current. Motors, for example, have higher inrush currents than do lighting. Whether the current is in step with the voltage, and that's an issue called power factor or phase, and whether there's a regular pattern of on and off cycle, such as there would be with a refrigerator cutting in and out periodically. Okay, this is a profile of the information that you get off a smart meter. Now, the labels, I don't know if you can read them or not, but the labels up there that say refrigerator, toaster, and so on, those were added. But if you take all those labels off, that's exactly what the output of the smart meter could look like if it was set to monitor very small time intervals, like 1 minute intervals. This is based on 1 minute intervals. Now, if they're only going to take a reading every hour, then you're not going to get that amount of detail. But this is what's possible, okay? Over at the left, right there, probably can't read it, but it says refrigerator. You see a series of little bumps, evenly spaced. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, evenly spaced little bumps down there. Not much electricity, but it's cutting on and off regularly. We know from that this would be a refrigerator. It's probably the only common appliance that would do that. Then we have, over here, a real tall one. That's a toaster. Draws a lot of current, but only very briefly, you know, maybe 20 seconds or so. Then you get the washing machine, and that has a different pattern, and so forth. The point is simply that the pattern of usage would reveal what appliance is being used. Next. The utility can change the recording interval at any time. So, for example, if they say, oh, not to worry, we're only going to take a reading once an hour, we won't show that kind of detail. It's a problem whether we should believe that, because they can send a signal to the meter to change the recording interval. The meter, the chips that are in the meter are perfectly capable of taking readings every minute, and they could choose to turn on that feature at any time. Smart meters generally can be programmed remotely. Next slide. Okay. Now, just to give you an idea, if you think this is all pretty hypothetical and maybe it won't really happen like that, in California it's already happening. In California, the utilities have permission from the State Regulatory Commission to sell the data that they're gathering through these smart meters. They have it. It's legal for them to do that. And companies are lining up to buy that information. They had an auction recently to auction who would be the successful bidder to get all that information. And there are other companies that are developing software that will take that raw data that you saw on the previous screen and reformulate it into something that's a lot more user-friendly. You know, I mean, some insurance company's not going to want to look at that thing with all the jagged peaks. That wouldn't be very useful to them. But if there's a piece of software that'll take that and present it in a tabular form and say, this is how many hours of sleep every night this person is getting, and reveal other things about their daily pattern of living, and it's all in a tabular format in plain English, then it's a marketable product, and there are companies making the software to do just that already. Next. Well, I think we talked about this already. Next and next. Okay. Who would want it? Who would want the information? Insurance companies, employers, marketing companies, police. And although I don't have it up there on the slide, your friendly neighborhood burglar might want it too. Because it would allow him to case neighborhoods very efficiently. If he could tap into that information, he'd know who's home and who's not home. Next. Phase 2 of the privacy assault is when you're forced to buy the smart meters, smart appliances, I should say. Now, the talk is that, well, the smart appliances, you may not have a choice about. Whirlpool, for example, has already announced that they will make no appliance. Their entire product line, they'll make no appliance that is not a smart appliance starting in 2014. So you can only keep your old appliances going so long. You know, you're going to have to buy the new appliances. Your house will soon be populated with smart appliances, and those appliances will be talking to your smart meter, and that will relay the information to the utility. The utility, there are no legal prohibitions currently in Michigan even, that they can't sell that information. The utilities will tell you, well, no, we're not going to do that. We would never do that. We have no plan to do that. But yet there's no law that prevents it, and if it becomes lucrative enough, I think it's predictable that that will happen. I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, I said anything to make money.
Right. Now, utilities are saying, well, we're only going to harvest that information from your smart utilities if you sign up for one of these voluntary programs. Well, that may or may not hold. And you may find that programs in time are not voluntary anymore. Next. There is a federal agency called the National Institute for Standards and Technology. I think it's part of the Department of Commerce, abbreviated NIST, N-I-S-T. They had formed a working group to study and recommend appropriate standards for protecting people's privacy in a smart grid system. The working group issued a report in August of 2010. Next. One of the key conclusions that they came to was about choice and consent. An organization, this is a direct quote from that report, an organization should clearly, fully, and accurately describe the choices available to individuals and, to the extent practicable, obtain explicit approval for the collection and use of their personal information. Consumers should have the option to forego data collection and services that are not related to the core services provided by the organization. Well, we don't see that. Our two big utilities in Michigan, or at least I'm more familiar with Detroit Edison, and maybe consumers will do it better, but they're not telling anybody anything. All they tell people is about a month before they do installs in a certain area, they'll put out notices that say, we're coming through in about a month to, quote, upgrade your meter. That's about the extent of the information that they're providing. They don't, talk about any of the things that the meter can do that might be worrisome to the homeowner. So they're going to have to give people enough information they can make an informed choice whether they want to do this or not. Now, the point I wanted to make here is this federal task force made this specific recommendations for the smart grid nationwide. As far as we know, no utility is following it. They didn't follow it in California, they didn't follow it in Texas, they didn't follow it in Nevada, they didn't follow it in Maine. All of these states, there's battles going on. And the utilities want to harvest the information, they want to be able to sell it. And nobody is following those recommendations. Now, where are these meters being installed? Well, they're being installed all over the world. As you can see, all over the United States, most all of Europe, parts of the Mideast, South Africa, parts of South America, looks like Brazil mostly. And although it doesn't show on this map, China, Japan. Why is this happening everywhere and at the same time? It seems like no one is holding back and saying, well, you know, England is doing this, maybe we should wait and see how it works out there, if it's really, the program is really paying for itself, if the utility customers are tolerating it, or accepting it, or liking it, before we start in our country. But no, every country seems to be doing this more or less simultaneously. Next. And so I just wanted to briefly give you an idea why. It has to do with something called Agenda 21. And I think there's probably quite a few of you in this room that know something about Agenda 21 already. It started kind of with the Rio Environmental Conference in 1992. The first President Bush informally committed this nation to back this thing. It's a United Nations program now. Some people talk as if this is some kind of conspiracy theory. I got beat up for that by one of the reporters for Muskegon Chronicles, that I'm spouting a conspiracy theory. This is no conspiracy theory. This is reality. This is an official program of the United Nations. If you key Agenda 21 on your Google toolbar, you'll get a long document that's published by the United Nations that explains this program. So we got informally committed, so for the Senate to ratify it. It's just an informal commitment. Next slide. 3 successive presidents after the first Bush have continued this informal commitment. Clinton, George W. Bush, of course, and now Obama. So we've had 4 presidents that have backed this program. And what this has led to is specific legislation, the Energy Policy Act 2005, Energy Independence Act 2007. Next slide. 2009, Congress passes Obama's stimulus bill, and there was $3.5 billion in there to promote smart grid initiatives. Most of that money is going to promote smart meters, although there were many other aspects of smart grid that were supposed to be developed. You know, improved functioning of the substations, improved switching of the high voltage lines, all that stuff. But most of the money has been funneled into smart meters. Utilities all over the U.S. seem to be rushing into this because they want to get their share of the stimulus money, or they may want to qualify for other incentives that become available at either the federal or state level. In Michigan, there were 2 pilot projects. I think I talked about that. Next slide. No cost-benefit studies were proven. In 2010, the Michigan Public Service Commission issued an order that if utilities choose to deploy smart meters, they can charge the cost back to their customers. Michigan's then Attorney General Mike Cox said this is wrong. He took it, he sued the Public Service Commission, took it and went to the Court of Appeal. Court of Appeals agreed with the Attorney General that it had not been shown there was any justifiable basis to charge its costs back to the consumers. Nevertheless, the massive rollout has been going on my side of the state, with Detroit Edison. They're being forced on people. People are being told, until quite recently, they're being told they have no choice. Okay, we got the appeals court. Next slide. Okay, what do I think, and what do those of us that are working with me think is the real reason for this worldwide push? We think it's about controlling people and how they can use energy in their homes. Now, you can choose to look at that as in a more benign way and say, well, you know, we do have to be concerned about being overly dependent on that east oil. We do have to be concerned to some extent about, you know, polluting the environment, particularly coal-burning plants, and most of the electric plants are coal-burning, and they do create pollution, not just carbon dioxide, but other kinds of pollution. So there is some rationale for saying maybe we shouldn't continue to grow plants as fast as we have in the past. But do we want a regime of rationing? And I think that's where we're heading with this. The powers that be, I think, have concluded that we need to ration electricity use. One way to do that would be to make it just terribly expensive, but that would wreak all kinds of hardship on people who can't change their behaviors. So instead of that, I think what they're doing is they want a system that will monitor us. Are we using electricity for purposes that our government approves of? And are we using major appliances at the right time of day? All this kind of stuff. If they can monitor us, they can ultimately control. They can pass laws, regulations that say you can't run your washing machine or your dryer during prime time hours, and if you do, you're going to be fined. One of the things that's happening in one of the southwestern states, I forget which one, they're already penalizing people who exceed their quota. They're giving them a quota. This is how much electricity you can use in total. This is how much you can use during prime time. You exceed those quotas and turn the power off. They're doing it in at least one state already. And then when they turn the power off, they leave it off for 15 minutes. So you suffer no power for 15 minutes and then it comes back on again. If you continue to exceed your quotas, turn it off again. That's where we're headed. So what can you do? Well, I would say, first thing is inform your utility by sending them a certified letter that you do not consent to the installation of a smart meter on your home. This is what you do if you don't have a smart meter on your home already. And I think most of you folks in Ottawa County don't have it yet, so this should work for you. Then you post a sign right next to your meter. This is for the benefit of the installer. We do not consent to an installation meter. This is important too, because the installer may not know anything about the letter that you wrote to the company. All he knows is he's got a quota, he's supposed to install so many meters. If he doesn't see a sign next to your meter, he doesn't know that he shouldn't install it, so you got to have a sign. We also encourage people to lock their meter housings. Most meter housings, many meter housings, have a kind of a hasp where you can put a padlock. So if you have that type of housing, we would recommend that you do that. Next, if the meter is already installed, you should demand its removal, and we think you should consider self-help if your demand is not met. Now, this may not apply to you folks in Consumers Power area because this is what we've had to do over on the east side. Detroit Edison has been so obstinate, they will not ever take a smart meter off a house once it's installed. It doesn't matter what level of hardship is reported to them, that people are getting ill, that they can't live in their own homes, can't sleep in their own bedrooms. Doesn't matter, letter from the doctor, nothing matters. We're not taking it off the house. That is the attitude of Detroit Edison. Now, I think your utility over here is better than that. And from what I understand, and perhaps in 2 weeks when you get a chance to hear Mr. McKee, he can go into more detail on that. But I think it is their policy that if you strenuously request it be removed, they will remove it from your house. So you may not have to resort to what we did. Now, then the other thing, of course, is let your state legislative representative know how you feel on this issue. That would be your state senator and your state house representative. And if your rep is holding a town hall, that's often a very good time to get to them and to maybe several of you descend at once on the town hall meeting and talk about the issue during public comments. And it's a chance to disseminate the information to more people and to make your representative aware that this was an issue. Next. Okay. This is a key thing, and before I read the slide, I'll tell you why we think this is key. This is how we got as far as we did in Michigan. We started over in southeast Michigan. First thing, we tried the Public Service Commission, and we soon found out that they were not on our side. They were not going to help us. When we asked them, did you give Detroit Edison permission to install those meters? The answer was, they don't need our permission. We don't interfere with the utilities business practices, quote unquote. We got this answer multiple times from several different staff people at the end. We finally realized that that agency is hopeless. You're not going to get anything out of them unless they're forced to do something. So what we did is a small group of us, I'd say there's about 6 of us, we went around from city council to city council to city council and pled our case before each council. And we persuaded them to pass resolutions in the name of the city that resolved that the Michigan Public Service Commission should open an investigation into the health and privacy effects, and resolved that there should be opt-outs, and resolved that there should be a temporary moratorium on any more installs until these proper health studies have been done. That's pretty much what all the resolutions said. We got 24 cities to do that. When we had 9, the MPSC opened an investigation and ran 6 months. We think it was a sham investigation, and the report that they issued last June was what they intended from the beginning. but they went through the motions of this investigation. We need to move beyond that, and right now, our best vehicle is a proposed law by Representative Tom McMillan. He's a Republican from the Rochester area. He's got a good bill. It's House Bill 4515. Next slide. Oops, back up one.
Where'd it go?
Yeah, back up.
The end, huh?
Okay, well, maybe I didn't have the slide up, but anyway, McMillan's bill is a good one. And I'm going to wrap here in about a minute or two. It's a good bill in many respects because it says anyone who wishes to opt out, any residential customer wishes to opt out, only need to notify the power company. They have 2 weeks to take the meter off your house, and there's no fee for that. So those parts are good. We have a little bit of a difference with him on how he defines smart meter, and we plan to see if we can't get the language amended so that the definition of smart meter is a little bit more all-encompassing. But it's a good bill, and we hope to get it through this year. And I think with that, did I not have a slide? Back up one or two. I thought I had a slide that says what you might ask your county commission for.
Nope.
Yeah, okay. This slide. This one says, if you go to your city council or your county commission and you ask them to pass a resolution, these are some of the things that should be in the resolution. Support the right of all utility customers to opt out without an opt-out fee. We think it's outrageous to have an opt-out fee. Yes, Carl.
In your bio thing, it's House Bill 4315.
I think it's 4513, but yeah, whatever. Okay. We think it's outrageous to have opt-out fees because basically you're defending your Fourth Amendment right to the sanctity of your home,
right,
and you're defending yourself against an invasion of your health. And for those two reasons, to charge people fees to protect their health and to protect their Fourth Amendment rights, we think that's all wrong. And so ask your county commission to pass a resolution that says anyone can opt out without a fee. Then support the right of the opt-out customer to keep or get back their analog meter. It's the only kind of meter on the market today that we know of that's completely safe. Doesn't invade your privacy, won't hurt your health. Finally, these protections, we think they should be extended at least to small businesses and professional offices. The reason for that is if you're an electrosensitive person and you can get this thing off your home, but when you go to the doctor's office, you're going to be exposed to it, or when you go to the library, you're going to be exposed to it, when you go to any restaurant, you're going to be exposed to it. This may limit your daily activities. There's a law in this country called the Americans with Disability Act that says people who have disabilities, and I think being electrosensitive certainly ought to count as a disability, they're not supposed to have their life activities severely curtailed by the policies of governments and businesses. And so businesses, at least some of them, ought to be able to opt out, so there's some places where electrosensitive people can go. Okay, that concludes my talk. I'd like to entertain questions maybe for 15 or 20 minutes. Thank you. Yes, Jim.
Without the string of government, what do you call grants or payments through stimulus or otherwise, would we ever have seen these smart meters?
That's a good question. I'm not certain on that. Certainly that stimulus, that $3.5 billion stimulus bill helped start the ball rolling. But there were other things that might have started it rolling too. The Energy Policy Act 2005, Energy Independence Act 2007, the fact that at the state level many public service commissions were establishing task forces to see how they could implement those two federal laws. All this was going on even before the stimulus. Like for instance in Michigan, Governor Granholm set up an industry task force where there are regular meetings, I think monthly, between staff of the Public Service Commission on the one side of the table and sitting on the other side of the table representatives of the utilities. And she thought that that would be good to foster greater cooperation in exchanging information. It also makes them all tighter, and it makes it harder to get the Public Service Commission to do its job of regulating the people on the other side of the table. But that was in play even before the stimulus grant. So I think maybe the answer is it would have happened anyway, maybe just not so fast. Another question? Yes, sir.
I think maybe it's a little bit deeper than that and has a lot more to do with Agenda 21 than we think it does, because there's smart meters, there's smart growth, and it's all over the world now, it's coming. And it all originated about that time. And smart growth means moving all the people out of the countryside into the cities. This is eventually what they want to do, and then we get the smart meters to go on the smart growth houses. I think it's a worldwide plan.
Could be part of that too. I won't say you're wrong. It could well be. Who else would like to ask a question?
I got another one here.
Well, wait a minute. We'll get back to you, but give somebody else a chance. Yes.
As I understand it, these smart meters don't require UL approval. Why that would get out around?
Well, the utilities have been exempted from the National Electric Code. They're kind of a realm unto themselves. Probably the thinking was that they are already being regulated by the state public service boards in each state, and maybe that was regulation enough and that they didn't need to be under the National Electric Code. I'm not sure what the thinking was, but they are exempt, so it's not necessarily significant that their meters are not UL approved. Yes, sir.
Did you say something about after 2014 or 2015, all of the old appliances won't be able to be used?
No, I didn't say that.
I wasn't sure.
What I said is that beginning 2014, Whirlpool will make no appliance that is not a smart appliance, and I think the other manufacturers will follow suit.
Okay, but after that, if we still have old appliances by other companies, they'll still be able to be used?
As far as I know, they'll still work.
Okay.
But the question is, how long can you maintain them? You may find that you can't get parts for them to repair them, for example. Anybody on this side of the room? Yes.
They have to.
Ann.
Question regarding the appliances with the chips in them. If there's chips in these, then does that mean there are more radio frequency waves going through our houses, going to the smart meters, so that will affect us even more?
Well, that's correct, actually, because, and I didn't mention this in my talk, but each smart meter has two radio transmitters in it. One of them is designed to communicate to the utility, from the meter to the utility, and that typically runs at like around 900 megahertz transmitter. And the other one, transmitter, is to communicate internally within the home between the smart meter and all the appliances in the home. That one, at least the ones I've heard about so far, is at a higher frequency, 2.4 gigahertz, also known as a Zigbee type transmitter. And that's your internal, your home area network, it's called. So yes, you'll be hit with that one too. And there's a third thing that will be hitting you, and that is what we call dirty electricity. Because any electronic type meter that's on your house, at least the types that are on the market today, contain something called a switch mode power supply. It generates dirty electricity, travels through the wire of your house, and you are being exposed to that, where the old analog meters didn't do that. Other question? Back there, yes.
Did you mention what state had rationed? You said one state had control over the electric grid for their people and they'd shut it off, they'd practice that? Did you know what state it was that did that?
Sir, I don't think I said that. No, the one state, I think I know what you're referring to. The one state has put in a system that could selectively turn off one house at a time if that house exceeds their quotas. In other words, they're applying rationing. And if a particular house draws more than they're supposed to, they could shut off that house for 15 minutes. That's, I think, what you're referring to.
Yes, it is.
What state?
I'm not sure. I don't have that at my fingertips, but it was a southwestern state. It might have been Texas or Nevada or one of those southwestern states. Yes?
I just opted out, and I'd like Dennis to confirm this. I was pulled on the phone 60 $69 one-time charge, and about $11 a month. Those are right now before the Public Service Commission to get approval. My guess is once they are, it's going to be a lot harder, to get anything from there. Is that about right?
You got your numbers right, Mr. Rabbit. Yep. Come September, there will be fees associated with folks who don't want the meters because there will be a loss of efficiency, higher cost for us, and we'll have to send out meter readers. That's correct.
And by the way, everybody, this is Dennis McGee over here, who's going to be talking to you in a couple of weeks on this subject. Question over here. Do you want to come back again, sir? You had a second question.
Yes. You mentioned federal guidelines earlier in your talk, and I don't remember what department it was where we have to follow the guidelines that.
NIST.
Yes.
Okay.
NIST.
Now, who provides the figures to the federal government? Is it not the utilities all over the United States?
Well, wait a minute. You're talking about providing figures to the federal government. I don't know.
For the standards.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. This is a working group that they set up at the federal level. They don't have the authority to promulgate things with the force of law. They can only make recommendations. And so it was a group of people that studied the question, did some research, combined their thoughts into a report, and said, we think this is how it should be done. If we're going to do smart grid in the United States, people ought to have a choice. That's basically what it amounted to.
Is it not possible that all those people hired by the public utilities could make?
I don't think so, sir, because they're on our side. Their report was definitely on our side, but their report is being ignored by the utilities. Was that a question over there? I'm sorry, I thought I saw him there. Anybody over here? Did you want to go again, Ann? No. No. Yes?
I'm a civil engineer, so I'm talking outside my field. But I know what a Faraday cage is. Couldn't we provide a Faraday grid behind the meter and stop some of the radiation?
Well, there is a way that you could help yourself a little. A cement board is a good material. It has just enough conductivity to kill most of the radiation. It's preferable to use cement board rather than, say, aluminum foil. Aluminum foil can get you into trouble because it can become a secondary transmitter. You know, the original radio waves will set up currents within the aluminum foil, and then that, in turn, broadcasts more radio waves. So that's problematical, aluminum foil. But cement board is a good material for that. You can help yourself to a certain extent, but, you know, if you do it in such a way that it prevents the readings from getting to the utility, then you're going to have an argument on your hands. You know, you might better argue with them to take it off the house, you know. Okay. Any more questions? Yeah.
I never heard of cement board. What is it exactly and where do you get it?
It's the stuff that's used in bathrooms as a backing for tile. Okay. Like you go to, I don't know what you have over here. Do you have Home Depots and this stuff? Yeah, they sell it.
A lot of people call it green board.
Well, green board is slightly different.
Yeah.
It's used
pretty close.
in a similar way. Yeah. Yes.
Am I correct that you are basically suggesting that we can send a certified letter to the power company saying we don't want a smart meter?
Mm-hmm.
And am I correct that the young man that's here from the company, utility company, is saying that as of September, if I want to carry through on that, I'm paying $69 and then I'm paying $11 a month to honor the request I've made to the utility company?
That could happen, but that's not a certainty yet because both utilities, Detroit Edison and consumers, have submitted proposals. They are before the Michigan Public Service Commission. They're being evaluated by the commission. And as far as I know, no decision has been made on either one. There's a separate case that's done for Detroit Edison, and in the case of consumers, it's part of the general rate case. And I don't think either case has come to a conclusion yet. So it is not legal for you to be charged any fees as of today. But yes, this could happen. If you say, take it off my house, and they get the proposal through, there could come a point where they'll say, if you want to continue this way, we're going to have to start charging you to keep it off your house. It could happen. We think that's not right. It shouldn't happen, but it could happen. Yes, over here.
I was told that probably the smart thing to do if you were charged a fee to write on the check, pay it under duress, and then get on your legislators. I mean, get on everybody that's on that energy committee, and you tell them that we are fighting this without representation, and we do not expect them to be sitting on their hands while we're victimized by a monopolist.
Very good. Good.
You mentioned not only smart meters, but some places they're using a meter that is like a repeater where they can drive down the road and send out a signal, and then all the houses will send their readings to it.
Yeah, that's
How do we tell the difference between a smart meter and that?
Well, that's a good question. I guess you'd have to ask your utility. I'm not sure if there's a surefire way to do that. They find out what the meters look like. They're called AMR meters, for automatic meter reading system. And my understanding is they only transmit at the time when they're being requested to transmit by the drive-by vehicle. So most of the time they're not transmitting at all. One way you could tell is if you get your hands on an RF meter. You know, you can buy them for about $125, or maybe you know somebody's got one you could borrow, and just use the RF meter and see if your meter. You'd have to stand by it for some time, a few minutes, and see if there's some pulses coming off that meter. Normally, when the truck is not driving down the street, and then you can tell that way, I guess. Yes, over here, Jim.
On April 15th, otherwise known as Tax Day, familiar to Tea Party people, at the Fillmore Complex, we will have a town hall forum where 3 of the state reps, Joe Haveman, Amanda Price, and Roger Victory will be there. State Senator Meekoff cannot be there, but he will have a representative there. This would be an excellent time to sound off at a town hall meeting.
Sure. Okay, what I want to do...
I'm a point of order here.
Oh, okay.
Jim is going to repeat the location probably. It's not going to be at the Fillmore Center.
Oh, where's it going to be?
It will probably be at the Macatawa Road at the DHS building on James Street. Still don't know that for a fact.
Well, those of you who receive our emails will get information on this. And
yes.
Certainly a thorough meeting between now and then.
Okay, we're almost at 9 o'clock, so there's one thing I want to say, and then I'll conclude. I saw that there were some hands from people from Muskegon County. Ann Derwin from Muskegon County has got a little sign-up sheet. If some of you who live in Muskegon County would like to get together and get organized so that you can descend on your county commission or your city council as a group, and you want to get in touch with Ann, could you stand up for just a minute, Ann? Does everybody know Ann? Okay. See Ann if you can. She's got a sign-up sheet. Were you intending to pass it around or stand near the door? Or? Why don't you stand near the door at the end here, and maybe people can just approach you if they're from Muskegon.
Name, email address, and
Yeah, name, email address if possible, and if it's not an email address, then a phone number or something.
Why would you advocate that people write to the Public Service Commission?
Because they don't want to hear it. We know they want to hear it.
Sort of like writing to Debbie Staminoff.
Right. Okay, we're done.
Thank you all for coming. I do hope that you'll come back in 2 weeks. We will be at the library. We're going to have the other part of the coin. Dennis McKee.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be back in 2 weeks, and I appreciate everything Mr. Sheldon said. He interpreted some things differently than I will, and he came to some different conclusions than I will. But at least keep an open mind between now and then. And the one thing that I will say is that we've got a brochure out on the table. Take a look at that brochure. That will help you to get a little bit of the perspective from Consumers Energy. Mr. Sheldon spoke in very general details about utility information overall, not specifically very much about Consumers Energy. Our programs are very different in many ways than what Mr. Sheldon covered. And finally, if you do want to opt out of a smart meter, we don't require people to sign registered letters or anything like that. In this brochure, after you come in a couple of weeks, if you decide you don't want a meter because you're not convinced that they're for you, which they are, then you can call this number, which is in this brochure, and you can say, I don't want the information that these smart meters are going to be providing me for my use. and you can ask to not have a smart meter. But we'll talk about that more in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Dennis. I invite you all to partake of some more coffee and what have you. I would ask that any papers or what have you that by your chair, please pick them up. In the back of the room, actually in the foyer, there is the flyer on this gun violence thing. The rally, which is March 20th in Lansing, a number of us will be going, and we very much like to, get together carpooling and stuff like this. And here is the paper that I lost. For that rally, from 9:30, there will be a march, a sidewalk procession. Then from 10 to 11, people will meet with their state reps. From 11 to 1, there will be pro-gun speakers at the Capitol steps. From 11 to 1, and then from 1 to 2, we're going to go talk to our state senators. This information will be on our website. Again, I do hope that some of you will come back and finish up some of the coffee and cookies back there. And if I could have a few volunteers to help us clean up the kitchen, that would be even better yet. Thank you all. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah. Good.